Let's get your first impression to this matter when you heard about it, and also the conversation going on between these two prominent persons talking about Utomi and the former governor of Ogun State.
I think if you are a student of our history, you'll know that this is not the first time we are having problem with contract. We seem to have a penchant for, having issues with, let me put it that way, issues with contracts that are legitimately entered into by our nation and maybe subnationals. Virgin Atlantic at a point in time had a contract with the federal government. They are no longer in Nigeria. I mean, they were actually operating, there was an agreement between them. But I think a government came in and terminated the contract. And of course, you also remember that of the PID. Listen, so it's like it's a recurring decimal in our national affairs, and then that's a cause for concern.
And then the conversation going on between these two parties, Utomi and
Utomi joined the fray to say that the government of Ibikula Amosu terminated the contract he signed with his predecessor, and the governor responded by saying that he refused to feed, like you rightly said, entitlement mentality and peddling of influence and things like that. We sitting in the studio now might not really know what transpired in fact, except we have access to the documents of the contract. Then we'll see whether the clause for terminations were actually followed through, because in most contracts there will always be terms under which each of the parties can actually terminate the contract. So until you have access to such document, you might not be in a position to make an informed decision.
Well, up until this issue of Zongshan, Ogun State government and the federal government, if you look at the intricate web of contracts between this trial, do you believe that the seizure of the presidential jets is a legitimate attempt to recover damages, or an overreach by these Chinese companies?
It is an overreach in the sense that in international law, assets that are used by the sovereign in the pursuit of sovereign assignment of duties and responsibilities are usually excluded from being used for the enforcement of either a court order or an arbitral award, except the only exception is if that sovereign waived that right, and that must be included as terms of the contract. That is the only condition. But under international law, assets, because we must distinguish between commercial and functional assets. In international law, these are division. Assets that are being used probably for commercial purpose by the sovereign can become a subject of, levying and execution as in that are nearest to the beneficiary of an arbitral award. But if they are assets that are purely for the use of the sovereign in transacting business of state, they are actually excluded.
But according to the report, they are acting based on court's, arbitral order, on this matter. So it's not that they're just doing it, out of their own volition. It's based on the order they got from the court.
There are so many dimensions to this fact. Like I said, most times outside the purview of the documentary evidence before you, there are so many aspects of a court issue that you might not be in a position to actually. For example, I want to know, was Nigeria a party to the contract between the Chinese company and the Ogun State government? Because if I'm not a party to a contract,
why should you seize my asset?
I can't, the judgment cannot be binding on me. If I'm not party to a contract, I'm a stranger to a contract between the parties. You get a judgment, then you go after the party that you enter the contract into with. If two people have misunderstanding over a contract that they are parties to, I'm not a signatory to a party, to a contract. You can't get a judgment and come after my property or my interest.
Yeah, but they are saying the president, I mean, the federal government's property as a Nigeria's property. So one way or the other, they are trying to...
Under international law, Nigeria is a sovereign entity and she has immunity.
And that's what the government is also saying?
Yes, she has immunity. You can't come after a government asset. So if the president were to be seated in the aircraft and you seize it, it's like levying war on that nation. That's why the consular offices, the embassies, they are extensions of the country.
Countries, yes.
If you attack the embassy of any country, you have actually, if you attack the American embassy in Nigeria, you have actually levied war on the United States of America. And the United States of America will use everything at their disposal
to respond.
So there are assets that are under international law considered to be part and parcel of that sovereign nation, and they are immune from, court.
So speaking about response, like you have rightly pointed out, we do not have full details of what it is. Although Nigeria or the federal government has come out to say that Nigeria is a sovereign nation and, you cannot just take up our assets like that. But what kind of response are you expecting from Nigeria?
You see, the Ogun State government, if you, with the little snippet of, facts that have been gathered so far, because like I said, the documents, until the documents are before you, reading through them and seeing the judgment, then you will be in a better position to make informed decisions. But now, as it is, the state government and the federal government have been holding meetings with this Chinese company. I learned that one even took place, and sometimes in 2020 or 2023 in London, that they spent almost 3 days trying to resolve matters. Because ultimately, in the interest of both parties, it's usually good for parties to sit down and see if they can resolve the matter amicably. The Ogun State government, yes. But even after the arbitral award, because what the government is saying is that award is just too much for the state to bear, considering the consideration that the company has furnished. Because one of the reasons given by the state government for terminating the contract was that the volume of work done was just mere perimeter fencing and things like that, and they just felt it's not commensurate with the arbitral award. And the government, the Ogun State government, is sitting with the assistance of the federal government in trying to resolve the matter amicably, to say, okay, well, we agree probably there was an error somewhere, but we can resolve this matter because it has to do with compensation, monetary compensation. So we can work around the figure. So that's exactly what they are trying
But because the Chinese company is saying that the state government, that's the Ogun State government, had benefited or profited from whatever work they said they did there. And so that is why they are insisting on getting...
Yes, but there's nothing wrong. But if also in the course of the contract, because in termination of contract, there are several reasons why a party to a contract can terminate a contract. If, for example, the rate of work is very slow, federal government does it several times. You award a contract, a road contract to a road construction company that is supposed to have finished this work within maybe 48 months, maybe 6 years down the line, 7 years down the line. They are not showing competence to be able to complete. You can't keep subjecting national interests to the whims and caprices of a company. You simply call them to the table. You do not have the capacity to continue with this job. And I am in a hurry to develop my state or my nation. Then at this point in time, we have to severe this. We quantify what you have spent, pay you, and bring in a new contractor to continue the job. Every contract must have termination clause.
Absolutely.
So that the other person will not hold you to ransom. Otherwise, if there's no termination clause, it means I can sign a contract with you, pocket the paper, go to sleep and wake up anytime to say, this is when I'm ready.